Once upon a time, in a land far beyond the mountains, deep in the heart of an untamed jungle, there lay a legend whispered through the winds, a tale of a city made of gold. They called it Elurian, a place where riches beyond imagination were said to glitter under the sun, hidden away from the world for centuries. No map showed its location, and no traveler had ever returned to speak of it. But the promise of wealth and glory called to the hearts of the bold and the fearless. Among them was a young adventurer named Kael. With nothing but the stories passed down through generations and a compass that had belonged to his grandfather, Kael set out on a quest to find this lost city. Kael was no ordinary traveler. He was born in a small village where his grandfather, an explorer in his youth, had often spoken of a city hidden beyond the Great Cascade Falls. Kael had spent his childhood listening to these tales, and as he grew older, he became determined to follow in his grandfather's footsteps, to finish the journey he had never completed. One bright morning, Kael packed his belongings, his compass, and a map sketched with his grandfather's notes. With the villagers wishing him luck, Kael ventured into the dense jungle. Days turned into weeks, and Kael faced many trials. He crossed rivers that roared like lions, scaled cliffs that seemed to touch the sky, and battled through the thick, suffocating foliage that hid the path ahead. But each night, as he set up camp under the stars, his thoughts always returned to the promise of Elurian, the city where gold was as common as dust. But the jungle was a dangerous place, and Kael wasn't the only one seeking the city's treasures. Unknown to him, he was being followed by a group of treasure hunters, led by a man named Vargos, notorious for plundering ancient ruins and caring little for the lives of others. Vargos had heard the same tales of Elurian and, with greed burning in his heart, intended to reach the city first. One fateful day, as Kael approached the Great Cascade Falls, the jungle seemed to shift around him. The air grew thick with mist, and the roar of the falls drowned out all other sounds. According to his grandfather's notes, this was where the secret to Elurian's location lay. Hidden behind the waterfall was said to be a tunnel that led directly to the city's gates. Kael approached the towering falls with caution. The spray from the water soaked him, but he pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. As he reached the base, he noticed something strange, a faint carving on the rocks, almost invisible beneath the moss and water. It was an ancient symbol, one he recognized from his grandfather's map. It marked the entrance. With a deep breath, Kael slipped behind the curtain of water and found the narrow tunnel hidden within. It was dark, the air damp and cold, but the light from his lantern flickered against walls covered in ancient symbols, proof that this path had once been walked by those who knew the way to Elurian. After what seemed like hours, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber, and there, before Kael's eyes, lay the legendary city. Elurian stood bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, its buildings shimmering as if made of pure gold. Towers reached for the sky, and bridges arched gracefully over rivers that sparkled like diamonds. Kael stepped forward, awe filling his heart. But as he ventured deeper into the city, he realized something was wrong. There were no people, no signs of life, just empty streets and silent buildings. It was as if the city had been abandoned for centuries, left untouched by time. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the air, a soft whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Welcome, traveler," it said. Kael spun around, but there was no one in sight. The voice continued, "You have found what so many sought but never reached. But beware, for this city is not what it seems. Its riches come with a price." Kael's heart raced. He had heard stories of curses placed on ancient treasures, but he had never believed them. He stepped closer to a towering statue made entirely of gold, its eyes gleaming in the fading light. But as he reached out to touch it, the ground beneath him began to tremble. The golden buildings started to shift and crumble, the streets cracking as if the city itself was awakening from a long slumber. From the shadows emerged Vargos and his men, having followed Kael's trail. With greedy eyes, they rushed toward the golden structures, ignoring the growing tremors. "Stop!" Kael shouted, but his voice was lost in the chaos. The city was collapsing, and with every step, the treasure hunters sealed their fate. The ground opened up beneath them, swallowing them whole, while the golden structures turned to dust. Kael could only watch in horror as the city began to dissipate returned, this time louder, more urgent. The city was never meant to be found. It exists only as a test of the heart. Those who seek it for greed will find only ruin, but those who come with pure intentions will leave with the greatest treasure of all. As the last of the city crumbled away, Kael felt a warmth in his hand. Looking down, he saw a small golden amulet, a gift from the city. It wasn't the vast treasure he had imagined, but something far more valuable, a symbol of wisdom, a reminder that the journey itself, not the destination, was the true reward. With the amulet in his possession and the knowledge of Elurian's secret safe, Kael made his way back through the jungle. The city had vanished, hidden once more, but Kael knew its riches were not the gold that glittered in its streets, but the lessons it had taught him. And so, Kael returned to his village, not with bags of treasure, but with a story of the lost city of gold, and the journey that would live on in the hearts of all who heard it.